Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. I'm Stelliferous, and you have crash landed on the Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Welcome back. Logged by Stelliferous, 1:33 a.m. Blackroot Caverns. Some glyphs strike with claws, some with fire, but this one, it burrows into your mind and lives there. Deep beneath Blackroot Caverns, the tunnels pulsed with a humming frequency just beyond hearing. Xena kept flinching. Even Orbeek twitched like he was dodging something invisible. That's when the earth split slow, deliberate. From the cracks slid a living nightmare, NuroSpike. A massive worm-like glyph, covered head to tail in rigid black spikes, each one twitching like an antennae. Its hide was pale and half-transparent, pulsing with psychic veins. But where its forehead would be was a glowing, crystallized pineal gland, shimmering purple and blue like a star trapped in ember. Xena clutched her head. It's thinking in pictures, like it's already imagined how will fell. Orbeek made his weird little chirps, and Luna said, "This isn't an ambush, it's a prophecy." Neurospike didn't slither it or squirm. It hovered an inch above the ground. Gliding through the air and stone alike, its spikes hummed with a telepathic static, sending flashes of false futures, crumbling outcomes, and alternate paths. We saw ourselves fleeing, defeated, turned against each other. And I'm the one that spoke next. Neurospike isn't hurting us, it's warning us. But when we tried to strike, the illusions grew stronger, blending memory and nightmare. Every wrong move we imagined came alive. Then I stopped fighting the visions and embraced the real. I closed my eyes and focused on what I knew was real, my feet on the stone, Orbeek's wings brushing my side, Xena breathing beside me. The illusion cracked. NuroSpike froze, sensing it. And for the first time, it lowered its spikes and let us see it not for a monster, but as a seer longing to be believed. Name. I have to start it like this, because this is how Professor Lang wanted me to start these from now on. It's field notes. Name, NuroSpike. Type, psychic ground. Form, giant worm with sharp black spikes and a radiant exposed pineal gland. Abilities, mind fracture, overloads target's senses with false outcome. Spine scatter, launches psychic charges psychics charge spines in all directions. Burrow dream, travels between layers of reality while underground. Behavior, haunts places of deep psychic trauma or ancient prophecy, not hostile unless cornered. Feeds on thought, memory, and instinct. Believed to dream entire futures while in hibernation. And captured method is you must remain grounded in truth and self-identity. NuroSpike respects mental resilience. That's the only way he will let you catch him in a glyph. You know, some people forget that glyphs aren't just magic made flesh. Some of them started as something else. NuroSpike isn't just some strange celestial accident that slithered in from the stars. Before the glyph awoke inside it, it was a creature, an ancient worm that tunneled through the deepest crust of Nibiru. The old miners called them echo worms because if you shout it into the caverns, the sound would bounce back hours later, twisted and delayed. That was them, listening and learning. Over centuries, something in those depths, maybe a burst of psychic energy, maybe the weight of countless forgotten dreams, changed one echo worm forever. Its instincts fused with prophecy, its body hardened into living antenna. Its mind cracked open like an egg, and something looked back. And that's what we got from it, was NuroSpike. We don't know. Everything that we have on NuroSpike right now is just speculation. But we'll figure it out as we continue this endeavor of finding out what we can about every glyph in Nibiru. So it wasn't born a glyph, it became one? Luna asked. Zena's eyes went wide. It's like it evolved through thought alone. That's what makes Neurospike so different. It still remembers the soil. It still remembers the rhythm of tunneling, the instinct to hide and listen. Beneath all the visions and illusions, there is still a worm trying to understand the world it grew beyond. When it hovered closer, I could feel it, not just in my mind, but in the trembling ground. A living creature and a glyph overlapped, struggling to exist as both. And for a heartbeat, I didn't see a monster. I saw a tired, ancient animal that had seen too much. I set the glyph down carefully, its crystal casing catching the faint glow of the cavern light like a star trapped in glass, and I set it. It clicked softly against the stone floor, the sound echoing into the shadows like a drop of water into a still lake. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The air hung heavy, thick with the humming psychic tension that had been gnawing at the edges of our minds since we stepped into Blackroot Cavern. Then everything shifted. The ground shuddered beneath our feet as if something massive had taken a deep breath. A low guttural rumble rolled through the tunnel walls, vibrating through my boots, through my bones, and then the stone split open like a mouth. Whoomph! A blur of pale, spike-studded flesh shot upward, then down again, vanishing into the earth with frightening precision. Neurospike dove beneath the surface, carving through rock as if it were nothing but water. The glyph didn't even have a chance to bounce. One moment it was there, gleaming softly, the next gone, swallowed whole. Zena stumbled back with a startling gasp, clutching at her jacket. Orabeak flared his wings, letting out a chirp, echoing caw that rang through the cavern like a warning bell. But me, I didn't panic. This wasn't the first time a catch had gone sideways with Neurospike, panic was exactly what it wanted. I steadied my breath and reached into my satchel, fingers brushing past catching nets and flash bombs until they found what I was looking for, my carnivora plant. When I pulled it out, the air changed. The thick, vine-wrapped pot quivered as the plant's flesh mouth opened in a wet hiss. Rows of thorn-ridged line and petals, glistening with sap that smelled faintly of blood and sweet nectar. The aroma curled through the cavern like a siren's call, primal and tempting. Neurospike felt it. The ground beneath us trembled again, not like before, but curiously a ripple of movement passed through the cavern floor, like a pet predator, circling just beneath the surface of a pond. Then the first spikes emerged. They rose slowly, cautiously, like a dark force, pushing up the stone. Each spike twitched, vibrating with low, telepathic hums that clawed at the edges of my thoughts. I could feel him testing us, probing the air for traps, scanning our minds for intent. Zena's eyes widened up as Neurospike's head followed his pale, half-transparent body slid up from the earth, gleaming faintly in the dim light, and there, on his forehead, the crystalline pineal gland shimmered like a captive galaxy, deep purple swirling into electric blues. His gaze locked onto the plant, and then he licked his lips. It wasn't just a gesture, it was instinct, deep old animal hunger rising to the surface for all his psychic power. Beneath the glyph, he was still a creature driven by primal urges. "Oh, he wants it," Zena whispered, eyes wide. Steadying my breath, I gripped the plant. "Good. Then let's make him come and get it." The cavern felt like it was holding its breath. Orabeak stepped forward, talons scraping softly against the rock, wings slightly spread as if ready to launch into the air at any moment. Zena shifted to the right, silent and deliberate, circling like a hunter lining up the kill. I lowered the plant closer to the ground, letting its sweet, meaty scent thicken and pull in the still air. The carnivora plant responded eagerly, its petals opening wider. then strands of sticky sap drooling down its vines. NuroSpike hovered closer, the spikes along his back vibrating in rhythm with the strange psychic hum that filled the cavern. I could almost feel his mind brushing against mine, showing me flashes of false futures. A vision of him lunging, me failing, the plant crushed, Zena screaming. I forced myself to focus, my boots on the ground, the weight of the plant in my arm, the real solid world. He was trying to scare me off, but this time I wasn't giving him the satisfaction. This wasn't going to be about brute strength. This was going to be a battle of patience and wits. Senna caught my eye from across the cavern and mouthed, "Now!" I shook my head slowly, "Not yet." The key to catching Neurospike wasn't rushing in, it was drawing him out. And judging by the way his spikes were rising, the way his glands pulsed brighter with each passing second, we had his full undivided attention. I crouched low, the carnivora plant cradled carefully in my arms, its vines curled restlessly like it could already sense the psychic predator circling nearby. Neurospike hovered just beyond the fractured stone, half in shadow, half bathed in the soft purple glow of his pineal gland. His body coiled like a spring, spikes quivering with anticipation. This was it. No more stalling, no more hesitation. In one smooth motion, I set the plant down on the cavern floor, its mouth opened wide, dripping with sap that sizzled faintly as it touched the stone. The scent thickened in the cold air, heavy and meaty, impossible to ignore. Then, with my other hand, I reached into the satchel and grabbed a fresh glyph, its crystal core faintly pulsing, waiting for the chance to catch. The moment my fingers brushed its surface, the runes inside flared to life, sending faint golden light lines swirling across the shell like veins of light. I placed it carefully on the ground beside the plant, setting it with a practiced hand. The glyph clicked once as it anchored itself, then began its silent charge, drawing in ambient energy from the cavern and from my own steady breathing. Golden light began to climb its surface, slow at first, and then quickening like a rising heartbeat. Senna moved behind me, silent but ready, eyes locked on NuroSpike, or a beak perched higher on a jagged rock, wings partially spread for quicker maneuvering. He had flown up there a few minutes ago. Kind of annoying, but hey, he's there still. None of us spoke. The air was too heavy for words. NuroSpike's gaze locked onto the carnivora plant, and all restraint snapped. With a sudden surge, he lunged forward, hovering low but fast, a pale blur streaking across the cavern. His spikes hummed like 1,000 tuning forks. As if he cut through the air, the stone floor cracked beneath the force of his movement, sending vibrations rippling through my boots. I held my ground. Every instinct screamed at me to move, but this was exactly what I needed him to do. The golden light continued to climb the glyph's surface, swirling towards its pointed top like liquid sunlight. NuroSpike closed the distance fast, his mouth opening, tongue flicking hungrily as he zeroed in on the plant. The carnivora plant hissed in response, its petals snapped once like a living trap. For a split second, the cavern was filled with the sound of two predators, sizing each other up, one of the soil, one of the thought. And then, the glyph reached critical. The golden light climbed to the very tip of the crystal shell and concentrated into a single blinding point. Thwomp. A sharp beam of golden energy shot upward, flaring brighter than a lantern. The air crackled as the capture mechanism activated, pulling with a force that made my hair whip back and sent loose dust swirling in spirals. NuroSpike didn't have time to retreat. The beam latched onto him mid-lunge, wrapping him in rings of radiant light that spiraled around his worm-like body. He thrashed, spikes flaring, sending psychic noise exploding into my skull, images of breaking stone, collapsing tunnels, failure after failure. But the glyph held firm. The pull intensified, golden rings tightening like chains forged of pure willpower. Neurospike hovered Neurospike's hovering momentum faltered as the energy dragged him backwards, away from the plant, away from the shadows, and directly toward the waiting trap. The glow reflected off the walls, bathing the cavern in warm light, as if the sun itself had been lit underground. Zena shielded her eyes, yelling over the roar. "It's working, Stelliferous!" Orbeek cried out triumphantly from his perch, wings spread wide as if announcing victory to the whole underground world. I didn't answer. My focus was locked on NuroSpike, on the way his psychic illusions tried to claw at my certainty. Visions of the glyphic cracking, of him escaping, of us losing everything, flashed like lightning in my mind, but I pushed them aside. This was real. This pull was real. This trap was working. With a final guttural screech that echoed through both air and mind, NuroSpike was yanked off the ground and pulled into the glyph. There was a blinding flash, and then silence. The light collapsed inward, and the glyph clinked softly against the stone floor, still and silent, its golden veins dimmed to a warm glow as faint psychic ripples faded into nothing. For the first time that night, the cavern stopped humming. NuroSpike was caught, not through brute force, but through patience, precision, and a little bit of bait that smelled like dinner. Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. For anybody that's wondering, there is 2 versions of the carnivora plant. There's the one that's living, and then the one that's kind of not really sentient at all. Which, the one that's not really sentient at all is the one we use for our ritual here on Nibiru. Though I didn't bother going to Orion. He'd just yell anyway. There's one thing I've learned. It's that waking him up in the middle of the night with a few glyph captures usually ends with a lecture about reckless behavior and endangering the team before I can even finish my sentence, and honestly, after everything with NuroSpike, I wasn't in the mood to be scalded. I told myself I'd break the news tomorrow. As for Lang, yeah, that was another problem. I wish I could have told him. I wanted to tell him, but he was still mad at me for missing our date, not just any date, one we'd planned weeks ago. I bailed last minute to chase down NuroSpike. Even though I tried to explain, he didn't want to hear it. I can't blame him. It's hard to understand why I drop everything for these creatures if you've never stood face to face with one. If you've never felt that mix of fear and awe swirling in your chest as something ancient and powerful as it looks right through you. So instead of heading back to base, I wandered out into the night. Nibiru's fall season had arrived in full, and the world had taken on the strange, quiet magic that only happens this time of year. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of sweet leaf, trees, and cool river stone. Overhead, the twin suns and the 3 moons hung low and bright, bathing the forest in soft silver/gold light that made every branch and leaf look carved from glass. The trees had already begun their annual transformation, their wide leaves shifting into deep copper, burnished golds, and mute purples. When the wind swept through, it sent them drifting down in slow spirals, carpeting the forest floor in shimmering colors. It wasn't like Earth's autumn. Nibiru's forest glowed faintly at night during the fall. The veins in the leaves absorbed and reflected the starlight. The ground looked like it was sprinkled with constellations, tiny galaxies at my feet. I tilted my head back and breathed in deeply, letting the cool air fill my lungs. For a moment, All the tension from the hunt, the shouting, the illusions, it all faded. No glyphs, no team drama, no arguments waiting for me back at the base. Just the quiet beauty of Nibiru's fall night. I was happy in that moment, yet for some reason I couldn't shake the feeling of wondering why we didn't use our regular words that we had been using for 800 years since we left Earth. Standing there beneath the glowing trees, I wondered why. We left that planet 800 years ago, 8 centuries since the last ship tore through the veil, carrying the final scattered pieces of humanity to this strange, breathing world. Nibiru became our refuge, our home, its skies, its forests, its creatures. They shaped us, changed us. We learned to survive here, while the rest of Earth decided to stay on Earth because that's where they wanted to be. We've learned to build our lives beneath foreign stars, and yet, for some reason, our tongues never truly left the soil of the old world. The wind rustled through the autumn leaves, and I caught a few words drifting from my own thoughts. Earth words, familiar, heavy with history. Why did we keep them? What is it, habit? Or was it pride? Or was it something deeper, some desperate instinct to hold on to who we are, even as a planet remade us? I kicked at the glowing leaves under my boot, watching them scatter like tiny galaxies. The night was quiet except for the whisper of the trees and the faint hum of distant creatures awakening under the twin suns and the 3 moons. Sometimes it almost felt like the earth was a dream, a story passed down through generations, like a bedtime tale no one quite believes anymore, but the language that remains stubborn, clinging to us like old scars. 800 years, whole empires have risen and fallen in less time, and yet somehow a word spoken by ancestors across a dying sky still sits on our tongues tonight. It's strange, isn't it? How some things refuse to fade. Even me, now, I don't even call our fall. I don't call it what it's supposed to be called. Yet, I don't know. As I stood there wondering about the state of my world and how it had ended up where it is and why we had reverted back to the old ways, the crisp autumn wind of Nibiru tugged gently at my cloak. A shadow stretched across the golden leaves at my feet. I blinked, pulling myself from the daydream just in time to see a tall, familiar figure slowly emerging from between the towering emberwood trees. The always present suns and moons caught the edges of his coat, lining him like some ancient sentinel returned from the stars. It was Orion. His posture was as stern as ever, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sharp and searching. For a heartbeat I considered slipping away before he noticed me, but it was already too late. His gaze locked onto mine with the unmistakable mix of authority and quiet disappointment. The rustling of the leaves filled the silence between us as he approached. Each measured step echoed like a reminder that tomorrow's conversation had just arrived a night early. "What do you think you're doing?" Orion's voice sliced through the quiet night like a blade. Sharp and unforgiving, his eyes glared at me, cold and piercing, each glance like a knife digging into my chest. "I came out here to catch Neurospike," I replied, squaring my shoulders, though my voice wavered slightly. Orion shook his head slowly, the weight of his disappointment heavier than any lecture he could give me. My stomach twisted into knots under his gaze, shame burning hot in my chest. "You're not my dad, Orion!" I suddenly shouted. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "No, I'm not," he fired back, his voice booming through the autumn air. "And you'd better be grateful I'm not, because if I were, I would have taken away your glyphs and Glyph a long time ago." His tone was icy, deliberate, each word meant to sting. "I don't need you doubting me," I snapped. "It's not like you care anyways. You're always yelling at me." That's because you're always doing reckless things, Orion's frustration finally erupted like a storm. You never think, Stelliferous. You charge in head first, chasing danger like it's some kind of game. His voice cracked at the edges, but he pushed on louder now, his anger mixing with something else, something that almost sounded like fear. You know what? You don't have to worry about me anymore. I won't stand by and watch you kill yourself just to catch one more glyph. Before I could form a response, Orion turned sharply and disappeared into the night, his figure swallowed by the shadows between the trees. I stood frozen, speechless, the echo of his words lingering in the cool air like a wound I didn't know how to heal. And just like that, I had managed to upset the only person other than Lang and my two best friends who truly cared about me. The weight of what had just happened sank in slowly, like cold water seeping into my bones. I replayed my words over and over in my head, each one sharper and more careless than the last. I hadn't just argued with Orion, I hurt him. I could see it in the way his shoulders had tensed before he turned away, and the slight tremor in his voice when he shouted. Guilt gnawed at me, relentless and unforgiving. He didn't deserve that. He'd only been trying to look out for me, even if his way of doing it was harsh and unbearing. Sometimes. Deep down, I knew he cared maybe more than I wanted to admit. I let out a long, shaky breath, staring up at the amber-colored leaves drifting through the night sky. Or what could be considered a night sky, since the suns and moons never set. The silence felt heavier now, like the forest itself was disappointed in me as well. I clenched my fist, determination welling up through the regret. I'd fix it, maybe not tonight, but soon. I owed Orion that much. I wouldn't let my stubbornness break one of the few bonds I still had left. And that, my friends, is another episode of the Monster Catcher's Journal podcast. I hope to hear you next time. Hear you? I meant I hope that you hear me next time. Coming at you from Nibiru, and I will see you next time. Bye.